Greetings and welcome to the very first episode of the Return of the Campaign with Ernie Powell. And I'm Carl Kozlowski. I'm his co-host on the show. And today we're going to be reintroducing Ernie and introducing him to plenty of other people that are going to be tuning in for the first time, perhaps. And for those of you who are new, I highly recommend exploring his previous catalog of shows. He's had 26 episodes with some of the greatest icons in progressive activism and politics. So be sure to check those out as you explore the page that you found us on today. Now, Ernie Powell has been involved in public policy, progressive campaigns, and grassroots efforts since the mid-1960s. He worked as a boycott organizer with the United Farm Workers from 1968 until 1973. He then became a community organizer in Santa Monica, California, involved in affordable housing advocacy while working with others and laying the foundation for one of the most progressive local rent control measures in the country. He organized on behalf of environmental and coastal access and preservation issues in California as well. Beginning in 1993, he served as advocacy representative and later as manager of advocacy for AARP in California, working on national and state issues. He left AARP in 2012 to work as field director for the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare in Washington, D.C. In late 2013, he returned to California and started a consulting business. He is a consultant with Social Security Works and is organizing groups nationally to fight for the protection and expansion of Social Security. He also consults with the California Long-Term Care Ombudsman Association on issues impacting nursing home reform. Ernie has hosted 2 radio shows, The Grassroots Corner on We Act Radio in Washington, D.C., and, as we mentioned, this show, The Campaign with Ernie Powell, at Radio Titans here in Los Angeles. His focus for over 40 years has been on public policy issues impacting older Americans. He is a nationally respected expert on grassroots organizing and campaigns. He's 69 years old and resides in Los Angeles, California. Ladies and gentlemen, Ernie Powell.
Good to be here, Carl.
Yeah, so excited to have the show back.
Yeah.
We dealt with a lot of legends the first time around about 2-3 years ago. You had people that you knew throughout your illustrious career, right, mixed with some people I was able to get, as I'm a reporter with Pasadena Weekly Newspaper and some other places. And we had icons like Barney Frank, Ed Asner, the head of Now, all sorts of people. So
that's Terry O'Neill, who actually has left the Washington, D.C. area and now lives in Oakland, California.
Oh, really? Great. Okay. Yeah, so and we're excited. I'm going to go ahead and say we don't know probably on April 12th is what we're being told. We're actually going to have a blockbuster Representative Adam Schiff, pretty much, I'd say, the most powerful Democrat out there right now.
Particularly with his committee assignments, and he's so close to the for lack of a better term, mess in the White House, in that he's turned into the number one watchdog in D.C.
Yeah,
and Mr. Schiff is just doing a stellar job of keeping them accountable and keeping this issue alive as Trump attempts to navigate the sordid waters he actually created.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we're bringing back the campaign now. So why are you choosing to come back, and what do you hope to achieve this time?
Well, I think we have to just admit that we're in a brand new era. I mean, before we were the Obama presidency was, in my view, successful in a number of progressive issues. They did the ACA, which is what they're most noted for. That's the Affordable Care Act, and other kinds of things that enhanced our democracy and that help to bring seniors more secure. And of course, as you noted in my biography, I've spent most of my professional life working for older Americans. And older Americans, as I view it, are people over the age of 50 who will soon be receiving their Social Security or eligibility for Medicare. And they're very much at risk right now because of Trump and because of the Republican majority. So my view is that I'm on the firing line in the sense that I now I've worked with a number of organizations, as you noted, the Long-Term Care Ombudsman, who works on nursing home reform and fights elder abuse at that level. And now I'm working with or consulting with Social Security Works, which is a dynamite organization based in D.C. And our mission with Social Security Works is the protection and expansion of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, because they're going after this stuff. What the Republicans are doing at a national level is attacking Social Security, threatening to do it great harm, harming its administrative ability to serve the public, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that this show, in which, and we will bring back, as you and I have talked about, a number of people that we had on before. We're going to bring back Alex Lawson, who's the executive director of Social Security Works. We're going to bring back one of the co-founders, Nancy Altman. We're going to be talking to Heather Booth, who is a movie was recently done about Heather, who's a woman who started the Midwest Academy, which trains organizers around the country. Margot Cowan, who's working on immigration issues. She would be new for us, but she lives in Tucson, Arizona. I knew her in the farm workers movement back during my college days. We'll be talking to Margot. Artie Rodriguez, also president of the United Farm Workers, and a number of people that in this day and age, with so many challenges we have because of the Trump presidency and the Republican majorities, I think it's important that we keep our listeners informed, motivated, and organized to fight this fight as they are now. So that's why I think I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm excited to be back with you and to bring back the campaign with Ernie Powell.
Yeah, and I think that with once we get through with Schiff, when that goes well, we know it will. Then I think that we're going to be able to also mix in quite a few heavy hitters, that are around. Because between him and Barney Frank, I think that by then, we'll have the bona fides to get just about anybody to talk and possibly get some good, people that are in campaign battles this year.
Well, and there's a number of key races for 2018.
Yeah.
But you just raised Barney Frank. The Republicans are now they're moving to essentially take the legs out of the legislation that Dodd-Frank, which regulated the banking industry and the savings and loans industry, to stop practices such as predatory lending, to stop things where so many people lost their homes. It was actually the cause of the recession that we had when President Obama was elected in 2008. Mm-hmm. The Republicans are killing that thing. They're killing those protections. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot of work to do.
Sure.
And what we will do as we talk about this is hold candidates accountable. We've got 7 what's called in politics swing districts in California, where either the Republican incumbent has retired or the Republican incumbent, our polling will tell us, is very vulnerable. So my point being is that our approach will be to help lend our voices through the guests we have to the organizing that we need to do for this election cycle.
So, one thing people may wonder, like you were an organizer as a large part of what you do and have done, and the people heard that term like community organizer with Obama as he was coming up in 2008, and so thankfully most people respected that enough to just see, here's a guy who had a once in a lifetime appeal and he became president for 2 terms. But there were a lot of people that tried to knock being an organizer and make it sound like it was something trivial. So what, as somebody who's done this from the inside, what would you say is the meaning of organizing, and is there a big difference between the type of things you did and what President Obama did coming up?
What organizers do is help people realize their power and help people coalesce their power such that their power can have an impact over decision makers. Decision makers, typically, a decision maker is somebody who is elected to a seat, whether it's a local, state, or national seat. So an organizer gets people together around their economic and social self-interest in order to use their power. And in doing that, and this is much of what I learned either hands-on in my early years coming out of college or later on when I trained with the Midwest Academy, and we're going to have the person who created the Midwest Academy as one of our guests, Heather Booth, is that organizing for power at the grassroots level is the only way, is one of the most effective ways of taking on corporate greed and corporate monopolies, so to speak, who can buy their way with certain politicians. So an organizer is a person who helps people learn about their own power. There's a saying in that the great Dolores Huerta came up with she was the co-founder of the United Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez, and the saying that has been used over and over and over that she came up with, which is called "Si se puede," and that means it can be done. And "si se puede" in Spanish is opposite from the word "no se puede," which means it cannot be done. So imagine this: you have farm workers who barely make enough to eat, barely make enough to feed their families. Many times they're transient because they're migrants, live in disgraceful conditions in labor camps. A hard group to organize because every penny they make goes to survival. So it was important for the union, and this is what I learned from the union and from people like Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez, and another woman we're going to have on is Margot Cowan, who I worked with in San Diego. It is important to instill and inspire people to say that they have power, they have the potential. So an organizer does that. It's basically through the theme that the farm workers gave us called "Si se puede," and it is the way that democracy works.
Gotcha. And for anybody who heard me go for a second when you said "Si se puede," it's interesting to finally hear the explanation of where that came from, because what sprang to mind for me, and maybe for a lot of people, would be like when Howard Dean in 2004 was celebrating his victory, and he infamously got a little too excited and was like, "Si se puede, si se puede," and it was so it's good to hear the actual story behind it. That's very interesting. So then, sorry, the last. So I was going to also ask, what would you say, since you had a career for 45 years as an organizer, the last 6 years, you've also been published as a writer for both Huffington Post and Zocalo, the Zocalo Public Square. So could you tell us about some of your favorite pieces? How does your writing work with your organizing?
Well, I've always been either a writer in my mind or in real life. And what that means is I've only in the last 6 years have I had the opportunity to use my political career and my political experience and take that and put it into places that people can read. It's Zocalo Public Square.
Oh, sorry.
Is a periodical based here in Los Angeles, but it's also national and international. It was started by a very good friend of mine, and somebody I think you may have met, Gregory Rodriguez, who lives literally in our neighborhood. But Zocalo was moving from downtown Los Angeles, or Koreatown actually. This is six or so years ago. They were moving from here to Santa Monica with new digs and new offices because they needed to expand, because they're so popular and so well respected on many levels. And so one of their editors called me because Gregory Rodriguez remembered that I had a long career in Santa Monica on a number of housing and quality of life issues. And so they called me and said, would you write something about Santa Monica? Since they were moving to Santa Monica. So I wrote, essentially, it was the very first piece I wrote that was published for Zocalo Public Square. I wrote, and the title of it was When Santa Monica Was Like Oshkosh by the